What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be comparing the Shockwave Hammer and Shockwave Bow and going over which mobility item I think is best in Fortnite Chapter 4. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful or informative, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and comment down below which mobility item you think is best or which you prefer using in Fortnite Chapter 4. So, just to get some differences out of the way, I think the hammer is much easier to get. So you can find the Shockwave Hammer pretty much any means by looting, but especially in the Oathbound chests that are scattered around the map, and then there is also an NPC on the map that sells the Shockwave Hammer. So I think the Shockwave Hammer is much easier to get, whereas the Shockwave Bow, you have to get an augment to get this item, and sometimes you might get lucky and just get it as your first augment, but if you need to keep rolling and rolling and rolling, it can be somewhat inconvenient to get this item. The hammer is also much easier to use, in my opinion. You just tap the dash button or whatever the game calls it. You just tap that button and you get sent somewhere. You know what I mean? Whereas with the bow, you have to draw the arrow, if it isn't already drawn, pull the arrow back, and you do have to pull it a decent amount of the way to get the shockwave effect. I want to say like 75 or 80% of the way you have to draw the bow before you actually get the shockwave effect. You can't just tap it. If you just tap it and drop the arrow, it won't blast as a shockwave. So you need to dedicate a decent amount of time to drawing it back, and then you have to look at the ground behind you to shoot the arrow. So I feel like just in comparison, they're both somewhat easy to use, but if you're not that used to using the bow, I feel like you might get in some instances where you don't pull it back enough, and that's something that you'll definitely get used to as you use it more. But the bow itself, you get from an augment, and then once you have the bow, you probably also want the bow specialist augment, which will allow you to draw and reload the bow faster. So that time that we just talked about where you have to draw the arrow back, you'll make that a bit faster with the bow specialist augment. And then you also regenerate arrows, which is super nice, but I don't think that's really necessary. I've seen people talk about how important it is to get unlimited arrows with the bow specialist augment, but I felt like I had seemingly unlimited arrows anyways, because you can carry 31 at a time. That's 31 shockwaves. And then if you kill somebody, odds are they aren't using their arrows, because most players I run into in-game really aren't using bows. So even in a worst case scenario where they are using a bow, they probably have like 10 to 20 arrows that you can get back from them. So the regenerating arrows is nice for sure from the bow specialist, but I don't think that's like the main value of it. Arrows aren't hard to come by, I don't think, unless you're just like full running from people 24/7 and you never get any kills. I think you'll be fine on arrows. It's really that reload and draw time from bow specialists that makes it super essential. And then also soaring sprints is something that a lot of people like for the bows, but we'll get more into the augments later. The bow does have some advantages over the hammer though. Since you can carry 30 arrows, it's very easy for you to outpace the hammer. If someone gets tags on you and then tries to hammer onto you, you can run away from them and get away and like still have arrows to spare while their hammer is on cooldown, because you get 4 uses with the hammer and then each one has a 20-second cooldown, whereas with the arrows you have 31, like I said, and that is just a lot. So it's very easy for you to outrun the hammer users or catch up to the hammer users. And even people who run double hammer, that's 8 uses. You have 31. You have several times more than people running multiple hammers. So the bow is nice for that regard. If you just wanted to get around the map incredibly fast, the bow is better than the hammer. But in terms of like how you use these items in fights, I do prefer the hammer because it is easier to use. You don't have to worry about how much you're drawing the arrow back. The bow is also really nice at being able to move enemies. You've been able to do this with shockwaves forever, and people would do it from time to time last chapter, especially like getting people out of bushes or getting people off of cover sometimes. But you had to really think about whether or not you wanted to do that, because you could only carry 6 shockwaves, and it could be somewhat inconvenient to throw it depending on the distance of the opponent. But with the arrows, not only do you have seemingly unlimited with 31, or just literally unlimited if you have the augment, but it's much easier to shoot this at someone who's like, I don't know, 60 meters away behind a tree. It's very easy to get it exactly where you want, and it goes much faster than throwing the shockwave would have ended up reaching the opponent. Same thing with bushes. You can like spot check bushes across the map with this super easily, and in some in-game situations I did find that really nice while I was using this. And I definitely think it will be worth having someone carry it in squads for that reason. I think that is honestly the main advantage of the bow. Everyone kind of gasses it for being unlimited mobility. The hammer is unlimited mobility as well. It just has a cooldown, and I feel like most of the time for me, 4 uses is fine. I rarely just have to use all 4 uses and then need even more. But with the shockwave bow, you have unlimited just knocking people off of cover, and the a lot of people aren't used to playing against this in Chapter 4, so when you knock them off their cover into like a wide open area, they're just screwed in a lot of cases. I feel like the Shockwave Bow is definitely the less popular of the two choices. And then also, if you enjoy using the bow just as a weapon, like shooting people with it, it is nice to be able to do that and then also have a mobility item in the same item slot. You just kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone there, and since we only have 5 inventory slots, that's pretty nice. So I said we'd get to the augments later on, and like I said, the bow, you need Mechanical Archer, which gives you the bow. You need Bow Specialist, which allows you to reload and draw it back. And then I know a lot of people who like the bow style really like Soaring Sprints, because then you go much further if you're sprinting when you do it. Or if you do your sprint jump and then shockwave yourself, you go really far. Personally, I don't like Soaring Sprints because I feel like I sprint and jump around the map all the time, or very often, and I feel like you leave yourself super vulnerable in that 0 gravity state. But Soaring Sprints combined with the bow does work quite nice. So that's 3 of your 4 augments. And that leaves you room for 1 other augment, and there's a lot of really good augments in the game right now, like Splash Medic, where you get basically unlimited chug splashes, or it's very easy to replenish your chug splashes. Storm Mark, which gives you basically wall hacks in in-game situations. And then Forecast, which shows you where every zone is. Like, there's a lot of really, really high value augments, like Forecast and Storm Mark especially, I think are just like the top 2. Regardless of how you want to play the game, having those in endgame gives you like a ridiculous advantage. So if you're dedicating 3 of your 4 augments just to your bow, you only have room for 1 of those. And then also, you're probably going to spend a lot of gold cycling around making sure you get these augments. Because if your playstyle is the bow, you kind of need the bow and Bow Specialist, I feel like, just to even play the game. And while trying to record gameplay for this video, I went through about like 2,500 gold in like 3 to 4 matches. Like it was insane how much I was running through gold. And if this is just your playstyle all the time, I imagine like gold is going to be a problem. So I think the bow is really good. I would just rather have room for other augments like Forecast and Storm Mark. Like I said, I think the hammer is just more convenient to use because you don't have to worry about potentially messing up how far you draw it back. Because if you're trying to push somebody or get away from somebody and you mess up that arrow and you didn't pull it back enough to get the shockwave effect and you just barely missed it, you messed up your timing, and if you're trying to get away from somebody, you're probably going to die as a result of that. So I think the bow it's not like it's very hard to use, but you can get unlucky with it sometimes, I guess, if you just mess up that timing slightly. In squads, I do think, like I said, I think it is very beneficial for someone to carry this bow, because just having one person be able to knock somebody off of cover would be really nice. And those augments I talked about, like Storm Mark and Forecast, as long as somebody on your team has them, you basically have the advantage of it. Because like if one of your teammates have Forecast, they can just ping where zone is all the time, and that's not a problem. And then Storm Mark, when it goes off, it pings the people for everybody on your team. Like your teammates can see the ping as well. So yeah, in squads you kind of have more room to be more kind of greedy with your augments, or like really tailor your augments to your playstyle, because you can have your teammates take the other ones potentially. And having somebody to knock people off of cover makes it super easy for you to get picks. And if you get picks, it's very easy to win a team fight. So I think the Shockwave Bow could be really good in squads, and also in squads it might be harder for you to find 4 Shockwave Hammers, whereas if you have somebody who runs the bow and then somebody gets a bow augment, they could just get it and then give it to that person, and then you're good to go. So I definitely think in squads it'll be nice, and if this augment is available in 0 build squads, I think that will be the meta. I think definitely having 1 to 2 bow players on your team to just knock people off of cover and end fights faster, or just really inconvenience other players, separate teams, I think will be really, really good. And I think if the hammer ever gets nerfed or removed, I could see the Shockwave Bow being the meta. And I do think the hammer probably will get nerfed and probably will get removed at some point. It just really depends on if these bows are still here as well, because I wouldn't be surprised if augments get vaulted as the chapter goes on. So if we ever end up in a situation where the bow is terrible, I think the hammer is terrible, I think the Shockwave Bow will be the new meta. But for now, I think the hammer is just easier to use, and it frees you up to run other augments that are also really good. So I prefer the hammer playstyle, but let me know down in the comments below which you prefer, the Shockwave Hammer or the Shockwave Bow. If you haven't already tried it, it is pretty fun to use. It's just kind of expensive to make it work with how much gold you might have to spend like digging through the augments looking for the bow itself and Bow Specialist. Those 2 you want for sure. The other, if you want Soaring Sprints, that's up to you, but you definitely need those 2 to make the bow like extremely viable. But let me know what you prefer down in the comments below. I will see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.